Capital. Some possess it. Others lack it. A few have decoded its secrets, while the majority spent their lives in a frantic pursuit of it. You might perceive finance as a sterile world of spreadsheets, percentages, and cold arithmetic, a complex puzzle waiting for a solution. However, the most profound economic choices aren't made on a calculator. They are forged far from the digital glow, across kitchen tables, fueled by ego, status, anxiety, and a lifetime of personal baggage. The essence of finance is the friction between the rigid logic of a ledger and the messy reality of human nature. When wealth is on the line, we are unpredictable creatures, and your net worth is often a reflection not of your IQ, but of your temperament. This exploration is inspired by the profound insights found in Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. Let us investigate the irrational, deeply human mechanics of wealth. Generational imprinting. We are not blank slates. We emerge from different eras, raised by parents with vastly different tax brackets and philosophies, born into unique economic cycles with disparate incentives. Our early exposure to the financial world colors our vision forever. Consider the stock market and the phantom of inflation. An individual born in 1970 witnessed the S&P 500 surge nearly tenfold during their formative years. Naturally, they view the market as a reliable engine for growth. Contrast this with someone born in 1950 who saw the market stagnate during their 20s, resulting in a deep-seated skepticism toward equities. Those coming of age in the 1960s were scorched by rampant inflation, leaving them hypersensitive to rising prices for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, the 1990s generation grew up in a world of stable prices, viewing inflation as a distant, abstract concept. A person's early encounter with market volatility or currency devaluation builds a psychological fortress that dictates every future trade. We justify our financial maneuvers based on the tools we have at hand and the worldview inherited from our environment. People might be poorly informed, or they might make objectively catastrophic choices. But in their own minds, those choices are perfectly logical. As Housel notes, people do some crazy things with money, but no one is crazy. We navigate the world through different lenses, and because there is no single correct way to win at the game of money, no one is truly insane. We simply act according to the stories we tell ourselves. The architects of accumulation. Warren Buffett is universally hailed as the gold standard of investing, yet an astounding detail often goes ignored. Roughly $81.5 billion of his $84.5 billion fortune was amassed after he celebrated his 65th birthday. As Housel emphasizes, many miss the most critical variable. Buffett didn't just invest well, he invested consistently since he was a small child. By starting at the age of 10, he gave the engine of compounding 7 decades to run. Imagine you put $1,000 into an asset returning 8%. After 12 months, you've gained $80. If you let that $1,080 ride at the same rate, you earn $86.40 the next year. You're now earning interest on your interest. This exponential growth is deeply counterintuitive. Our brains are wired for linear progress, so we struggle to grasp just how explosive the end game of compounding can be. Let's run a what-if scenario. Imagine Buffett was a typical young man in his 20s who spent his early earnings on luxury travel and high-end vehicles. If he had started with $25,000 at age 30 and retired at 60, while still achieving his legendary 22% annual returns, his total wealth today would be approximately $11.9 million. That is 99.9% less than his actual multi-billion-dollar reality. His talent is picking stocks, but his unfair advantage is simply his longevity. Consider Jim Simons, the hedge fund titan. In terms of raw performance, he dwarfs Buffett, compounding at a breathtaking 66% annually since the late 80s. Yet his net worth is roughly $21 billion, a fraction of Buffett's. Why? Because Simons didn't find his investing stride until he was 50. He had less than half the time Buffett had to let the numbers multiply. Housel calculates that if Simons had started as early as Buffett, His net worth would be a number so large it defies human comprehension. $63 quintillion. Never dismiss the power of time. No matter how boring it feels, the math is undeniable. The magnetism of gloom. Optimism is the quiet confidence that the odds will eventually break in your favor, even if the path is rocky. Yet when the topic is money, we are magnetically drawn to pessimism. Historically, the quality of life has surged upward, so why do we cling to the dark side? It is because growth is a slow, quiet construction project, whereas destruction is a loud, sudden explosion. Finance is a lightning rod for negativity because the stakes are universal. A 40% market crash over a few months dominates every headline and triggers emergency legislation. Conversely, a 140% gain spread over 6 years is boring and largely ignored. We save 500,000 lives a year through medical advancements made over decades, a slow miracle that rarely makes the front page. But a sudden disaster, a crash, or an act of terror, that is instant news. There are countless overnight catastrophes, but almost no such thing as an overnight success. To remain practical, we don't need blind cheerleading. We just need to recognize that despite the daily noise, the long-term arc of history tends to bend toward progress. When the news cycle screams about a coming collapse, remember that the world has a remarkable habit of fixing itself over the long haul. The twin shadows, fortune and peril. In 1968, there were about 300 million teenagers on Earth. Only 300 of them attended Lakeside, a small school in Seattle. Lakeside was the only secondary school on the planet with the resources to lease a teletype Model 30, a computer so advanced that even most PhD students couldn't touch one. Among those 300 students was a young Bill Gates, from 300 million to 300. In 1968, the odds of being a teenager with a computer were 1 in a million. Gates and his partner Paul Allen didn't just have genius and work ethic, they had a 1 in a million head start. Gates himself admitted that without Lakeside, Microsoft simply wouldn't exist. But there is a forgotten chapter, a third prodigy in that group named Kent Evans. He was just as brilliant and shared the same vision. He could have been a founding titan of the tech world. But Kent never made it to graduation. He died in a rare mountaineering accident, a tragedy with odds of roughly 1 in a million. Just as an extreme stroke of luck catapulted Gates to the top, an extreme stroke of risk took Kent out of the game. Luck and risk are the wind and the waves. A captain can master the sails, but external forces ultimately dictate the arrival. Recognizing that success is a cocktail of talent and random fortune allows us to view our financial status with a necessary sense of humility and perspective. The dividend of freedom. We chase wealth because we believe it buys happiness, but Housel argues that the ultimate yield on money is the power to do what you want, when you want, with whoever you choose. Many people sacrifice their time to accumulate luxury goods, working longer hours and surrendering their autonomy. Yet the data is clear. Having a sense of agency over your life is the most reliable predictor of well-being, far more than the size of your house or the prestige of your job title. Treating money as a goal without valuing time is like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you fill it, it will never stay full. If you lack control over your schedule, you aren't truly wealthy. You're just a well-paid prisoner. The law of the tail. Heinz Berggruen was a refugee who became the most legendary art dealer in history. He amassed a hoard of masterpieces, Picasso, Klee, Matisse, and sold a portion for over 100 million euros in 2000. His secret wasn't a magic eye for every painting, it was the law of the tail. Research suggests that elite art collectors buy massive quantities and simply wait. Most of what they buy stays stagnant, but every so often, one piece becomes a global icon. Berggruen could have been wrong 99% of the time, provided that 1% of his inventory was a Picasso. This is the concept of long tails, where a tiny fraction of events drives the vast majority of results. This is the engine of venture capital. Most startups go to zero, but one unicorn produces a 50 times return that pays for all the failures. Look at Amazon. In 2018, the single company was responsible for 6% of the entire S&P 500's return. Within Amazon itself, the success wasn't built on a perfect record. It was built on two tails, Amazon Prime and AWS. These outliers erase the losses of failed experiments like the Fire Phone. Jeff Bezos once told shareholders that he was currently working on much bigger failures than the Fire Phone. He understands that you can fail 90% of the time if your 10% of winners change the world. We usually only see the polished tail and not the graveyard of attempts. A comedian's Netflix special is a tail event. You don't see the thousands of failed jokes told in dive bars that were cut from the final script. In investing, we often panic when a few stocks underperform. But even Warren Buffett has owned nearly 500 stocks, and only about 10 of them have done the heavy lifting. You can be wrong half the time and still become wealthy. It is the outliers that matter, not the average. Wealth is what you don't see. It is vital to distinguish between being rich and being wealthy. Richness is a function of current income and visible consumption. Wealth is the option value of money you haven't spent yet. True wealth is invisible. We see a person in a $200,000 supercar and assume they are wealthy. In reality, we only know that they have $200,000 less than they had before they bought the car, or that they have a massive monthly debt payment. Wealth is the Ferrari not purchased. It is the first-class upgrade you declined. It is the self-control to keep your capital in assets rather than liabilities. Building wealth requires a quiet restraint. It is easy to find rich role models because their spending is loud. True wealth is silent and therefore much harder to emulate. We are conditioned to think that having money means spending money, but the only way to stay wealthy is to not spend the money you have. The admission fee. Imagine scaling a mountain. You know there will be rain, freezing temperatures, and the risk of injury. You don't expect a golden elevator to the summit. You accept the struggle as the price of the view. In the markets, however, people try to find a shortcut. Housel compares the stock market to getting a car. You can buy a new one, high price, high reward, a used one, lower price, lower reward, or you can try to steal one. Stealing is trying to get the reward without paying the price. In investing, well, stealing looks like trying to time the market, jumping in before a boom and out before a dip. People want the 11% annual returns of the Dow Jones without enduring the gut-wrenching 30% drops that occur along the way. They see volatility as a fine for doing something wrong, rather than an admission fee for the privilege of long-term returns. The price of success isn't just money, it is the emotional toll of uncertainty, fear, and patience. Once you realize that volatility is simply the cost of entry, you stop trying to steal the car and you pay the fee willingly. The infinite ladder. Enough. Finally, you must define enough. You must understand hedonic adaptation. If you keep moving the goalpost every time you score, you will spend your entire life running, but never arriving. Look at the downfalls of the ultra-rich who turn to crime for more. For them, all the money in the world wasn't enough to satisfy their ego. Chasing wealth without a finish line is like climbing a ladder that never ends. No matter how high you get, there's always another rung, and that pursuit will eventually strip you of your happiness and your time.